Good afternoon. I'm Dolores Rogers, and I welcome you to the Legacy of the Emancipation Park Community History Project. And we have with us today a long-term, in fact, I think he was born in Houston, Texas,
Correct.
resident of the Emancipation Park neighborhood, Mr. Thurman Roberts.
Robbins.
Robbins. Mr. Robbins?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me who your parents were, where you lived in Third Ward, a little bit so the audience will know.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Third Ward itself. In fact, but I was born in 1940, and I wasn't born in a hospital on McElhenney. But at 6 months old, we moved to the CUNY homes. And my early childhood, from that time up until about 8 years old, we lived in the CUNY homes, which was an intact neighborhood. Everything that you wanted or thought you wanted was in the neighborhood, pretty much. I attended kindergarten at the CUNY homes, the CUNY homes building itself. They had kindergarten, and we had various activities there. My mother was Flora May. Glenn was her maiden name, and married my father, William Lee Robbins.
And where were they from?
My mother was from Willis, Texas, and my daddy was from Corrigan, Texas.
What brought them to Houston?
My mother was father was a sharecropper in Willis, Texas, and there was 10 of them, their children, siblings. And when she was about 9 or 10 years old, her father and mother moved to Houston. They were sharecroppers, and my mother said her father, they didn't have very much of anything. And her experiences growing up in Willis were not very good, because they were out on a farm and they picked cotton and so forth and so on. And so when they moved to Houston, she grew up in the Third Ward area. As I said, my father was from Corrigan, Texas, and they moved to Houston, I guess, when he was a young boy himself.
Okay.
His name was William Lee Robbins, and as an adult, my father was really just a laborer. He was a butcher, and he worked at the Houston Packing Company.
Oh, okay.
And he worked there for many years until it closed. He also had part-time jobs, like at the Houston Ship Channel, where he did part-time work there. But as I said, my early childhood was right in the CUNY homes, which is not too far from here.
Right.
I went to Blackshear Elementary. That was my first school, other than kindergarten, was at Blackshear Elementary for the first, second, and second grade.
Okay.
And then we moved from the CUNY homes to South Union, which is about 5.5 miles from the Third Ward area.
Tell me about that. How was that?
Well, when we lived in the CUNY homes, as I said, almost everybody that lived in the CUNY homes were intact families, mother, fathers, and children in each household. And just depending upon the type of work that you did, that kind of determined what kind of rent that you paid each month.
Oh, okay.
And my father would say all the time, he said that, if you're going to get ahead in life, he said, you need to own your own property. And for several years, he said that they would go up on the rent about every 6 months. And so...
Do you remember how much the rent was?
I really don't know how much the rent was. And as I said, we didn't have a whole lot of money at all. I guess most of the families didn't, because of course, the CUNY homes is a project type of area. I remember him saying to me, he said, Thurman, I want you to go to that grocery store, because there was a grocery store that was very close to us. And he said, I want you to pick me up one of those policy slips. Well, policy was what we call today is the lottery. That's what policy was back during that time. And people would wager monies, small amounts of monies, $1, $2, whatever they had. And you have these policy slips, but they had various numbers on them. And you would block the numbers that you wanted. And then every Friday, they would have a payoff.
Okay.
Depending upon how much you actually was able to bet. And he said, I had this dream, and I dreamed about these numbers. And he said, I'm gonna put a bet down. I think it was $5.
Wow.
$5, and it was with those particular numbers. So he turned that in, and of course that Friday when the numbers came out, those were the numbers that hit. And he must have won like $300 or $400. But he took that money and he purchased those lots out in South Union. And on that lot, he bought an army barracks, just a building with 4 walls, no partitions or nothing. And on weekends, he and my uncles would go in there and they would petition that building off and made it a home. And so I can remember like it was yesterday, that summer must have been the summer of '48. He told my mother, he said, listen, they go up on this rent one more time. He said, we moving out of here. And sure enough, about the middle of the summer, they went up on the rent. He called my uncle. We had a trailer and a truck. We put all our things in that, and we moved to that house on North Street in the South Union Addition.
Wow.
And that's a family place as of today.
As of today, that's your family home?
It's still in the family.
Okay. Well, Mr. Robbins, we're going to come back in just a few minutes, and we want to hear a little bit more about your experiences in the Emancipation Park neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Planning the right amount of food is hard. The Guestimator makes it easy. Just tell it who's coming and what's for dinner. Then it tells you how much to make. And yes, it even plans for leftovers. Try it at savethefood.com.
Red shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt, oops. Yellow pants, red pants, green pants, oops.
And we are here. It's such a pleasure to have with us Mr. Robbins. And he is here to tell us about his experiences in the Emancipation Park neighborhood. And so, Mr. Robbins, why don't you tell us about, Mr. Robbins is a 1958 graduate of Jack Yates High School.
That's correct.
Yes. So tell us about how it was being a student at Jack Yates in the 50s.
Well, of course, during that period of time, Jack Yates was a junior, senior high school, went from 7th through 12th grade. And so I entered Jack Yates High School in 1952 as a 7th grader. The school was so crowded during that time that we had to go in shifts. There was a group of students that went at 7:30, and we got out at 2, and then another group came in at 12, and they got out at around 5 or 6 o'clock.
Oh.
That's how crowded it was with the number of students at that school. But it was a great school. We had great teachers and administrators. That was the grounding of my career in terms of what I wanted to be in life. I had some great experiences at Yates High School. I was always involved in the art contest. I was in the band. I was in the marching band. In fact, I started out in the 7th grade in the beginner's band. I never played an instrument before in my life.
Okay.
But I was somewhat intrigued at my church, and I went to Greater Zion Baptist Church. They had a group of musicians that would come once a year, and there was a saxophonist, a trombonist, and a person that played the piano.
Where is Greater Zion?
Greater Zion is up near the Gulf Freeway, off of Truly and Ty Webster. M.L. Price was the pastor at that time.
Okay. I remember M.L. Price.
M.L. Price.
Yeah.
And this group, trio, would come and play once a year, and I was intrigued about that trombone player. I said, oh, this guy was playing the trombone. That just knocked me out. So I said, if I ever get a chance to play an instrument, I'm going to play a trombone. So when I got into 7th grade, we had an elective that we could choose. And I said, well, I'm going to play in the band. So the band instructor, Will Henry Bennett, was the band instructor.
Mr. Bennett.
Mr. Bennett, Will Henry Bennett. And I played the trombone. And I was pretty good at it. 7th grade, in the high 7th grade, I was promoted to the intermediate band. And then when I got to the 8th grade, he promoted me to the senior band. So I played in the senior band from 8th through 12th grade. Oh. I was also on the swim team.
A swimming team. So there was a swimming team at Yates.
Oh, yes. Mr. Raymond Daniels was our coach. And I started out with Raymond Daniels. And Raymond taught us how to swim in the 9th grade. All the students at Yates at that time had to take swimming, boys and girls. And the 9th grade, you took swimming. That was required. And so I took beginner swimming from Mr. Daniels. And at the end of that period, that's when they started the swimming team. And I asked Coach Daniels, I said, well, Coach Daniels, can I be the trainer or the manager of the swim team? I say, I know my skill is not that good. He said, Robbins, you can be the trainer or the manager. So that's what I did. I was the trainer, the manager. And every day when the team was working out, I would get in the pool and play around on the sides, staying out of the way of the other contestants. And one day I was just sitting on the side. I said, well, I'm not going in today. I don't need to go in every day anyway. I'm just a manager. And so I was sitting on the side in my clothes, and Coach Daniels passed by and said, Robbins, he says, are you doing okay? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, where's that swimsuit? I said, oh, Coach, it's in the locker. He said, well, go put that suit on and come on in the pool. I said, but Coach, I'm just a trainer. He said, get that suit on and get in here. And from then on, I was on the swim team. Right. I couldn't beat anybody, but I was on the team. So that was a great experience. But from that, I progressed, and I became one of the best swimmers on the team. In fact, about it, my sophomore, junior, and senior year, I was the captain of the team.
Oh, okay.
I was fortunate enough to get a college scholarship. That's how I was able to go to college.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Southern University in Baton Rouge on a swimming scholarship.
Okay.
People could say, you mean they had swimming teams during that time, for blacks during that time? Almost all of the HBCUs had swimming teams during that time. Hampton, Howard, Southern, Grambling, Prairie View, Texas Southern, Dillard, just about all of those schools had swim teams. Okay. So it was an interesting period of time.
Well, Mr. Robbins, thank you for sharing with us your experiences at Yates. And we will be back shortly to hear about your books, the books you've written. Thank you very much. Okay, so then we'll get in the book.
Okay.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science, become the mayor or something, make the situation better for other people. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
I'm Ferdinand. You look at me and think big. You think scary. But I'm a little misunderstood. Sorry I almost killed you. Kids with learning and attention issues are misunderstood too. Take the time to understand. Learn more at understood.org.
Planning the right amount of food is hard. The Guestimator makes it easy. Just tell it who's coming and what's for dinner. Then it tells you how much to make. And yes, it even plans for leftovers. Try it at SaveTheFood.com.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Welcome back. I am delighted to be here with Mr. Thurman Robbins, and he's going to tell us a little bit about some books he's written, and those books highlight a period of time around sports in the Emancipation neighborhood. So, Mr. Robbins, you've written 2 books. Tell me about them.
Well, I've written more than 2 books, but I'll talk about these 2
Okay.
Primarily. Actually, my career involved teaching. And in fact, about I said, Jack Yates High School was the place where I just got all this inspiration in terms of what I wanted to do in life. Mr. Daniels, Raymond Daniels, my coach in high school, I wanted to be just like him. So when I went off to college, I majored in health and physical education to be a teacher. And I got a job when I finished school in teaching in HISD. From there, I went to various schools, high schools and all, and then I went back to school and got a master's and got a doctorate degree, and I worked at Texas Southern University for 33 years as a professor there. But in terms of that, in terms of being a professor and being involved in education and so forth, I started doing a lot of writing. And so I've really written 6 books at this point in time.
Fantastic.
But the 2 that I have today that I'm going to just give a little brief history about is, first one is called Requiem for a Classic. It's about the Yates-Wheatley Thanksgiving Day game.
Oh, I've heard wonderful things about that game.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
My sister, I have a twin sister.
Okay.
And my twin sister was, she was in education also, finished from Yates, went to Hampton.
Okay.
and came back and taught in HISD and was a counselor and all of that. So from
What was
time
your
to
sister's name
her name
again?
is Thelma Robbins Gould.
Okay.
Thelma Robbins Gould, my twin sister.
Okay.
So from time to time we would talk, especially around Thanksgiving, we would talk about, oh, we just had a marvelous time about that Thanksgiving Day game, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we would just talk. And she said, you know, we're just talking about this history. She said, somebody need to chronicle this. Somebody need to put this in writing. She said, because once we leave this place, that information is going to leave. Nobody will have the benefit of that. And she would say that to me from time to time. And I was being inducted into a Hall of Fame in Dallas.
Okay. Tell me about
Because
that.
it's called a Black Sports Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And I was one of the inductees, and they had a breakfast that morning. And at that breakfast, after the breakfast was over with, several of us were standing around talking. And there was a couple of Caucasian people standing there. And they said, oh, you from Third Ward. We heard you were from Third Ward and you went to Jack Yates. Well, we live near that community over by U of H. And I said, oh, you do? For some reason or another, this game came up about the Thanksgiving game. They said, oh, we don't know anything about that. I said, how long have y'all been living in the community? They said, over 30 years. I said, oh. Said it reminded me of what my sister had told me, that if somebody don't tell this story, it's going to disappear. And so with that, I started doing some research on the game. And of course, in high school, I played in the band, and the band performed at the games, in the parades and all of that. My sister was in the drill squad. She performed at the games and all that. So as I said, I had some vivid memories, personal experiences. And then,
Tell me about one of those. What do you remember about? Is there a particular game or a particular?
every game was so exciting. Every game was, it was just a natural rivalry between the two schools. The things that the kids at Wheatley experienced, we had some of the same experiences at Yates. And in various years, talking with the students that went to Booker T. Washington, they had some of those same experiences. So we had various experiences. And then, of course, I remember marching in the parades. We marched all the way down Dowling Street, which is now Emancipation Avenue, marched all the way down to the school. From there, we would go home, get our uniforms and things, and come to the stadium, because the game was always an afternoon game. And it was just, it was such an event. It was something that looked like the whole communities, the black communities, everybody was at that game. And
How many people were there?
Oh, doing the research back in the early 40s, they had over 1,000 people at the game. And it grew from 1,000 to 2,000 to 5,000, 10,000. So in the 50s, there were 20, 28,000. And up to the last game that they had, the 66 game, I think they had 41,000 attendance at the game.
41,000 people.
41,000.
Oh.
There were write-ups in various newspapers, not only in Texas, but all over. They said, when they talked about that game in terms of the number of people at the game, they said there was not another schoolboy, high school game in America that had that many in attendance. They had one game in Chicago that they said the attendance was maybe a little larger, but it was an all-star game. It wasn't between two schools, and it wasn't a yearly thing.
Right.
But this was a yearly thing. 25, 30, 35, 40,000 people was attendance every year.
Wow, that must have been.
And so I decided to write the book, and I started doing more research. In fact about it, this is the second edition of the original book.
So what did you change from one book to the other?
I added more stories.
Okay.
Well, what happened, there were several people who read the book, the first book, and said, oh, you didn't tell about this. I've got some experiences. You should have mentioned this. I said, okay, well, share that with me. I said, share that with me. And if I get enough information, additional information, I said, at some point in time, I'll do a second edition. I'll keep all of the information in the first book, and I'll add all of this other information. And that's what came about.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
about 4 years later, this second edition came out.
Okay. Tell us about your other book.
Now, this other book is a book about competitive swimming in the black high schools of Texas, beginning in 1955 through 1967. That's prior to integration.
Okay.
The competitive swimming programs consisted of about 13 years that program existed, and it started out with a very meager number of students and participants in the program. There were only four black high schools in Texas that had swimming teams. Two were in Houston. The third one was in Galveston, Central High School in Galveston, and the fourth one was Lincoln High School in Port Arthur, Texas. They had the first, what they call a first PVIL, Prairie View Interscholastic League swimming meet, and it was held in Central High School in Galveston, Texas. At the end of the program, there were only 7 high schools that participated. Those 4, plus we had Worthing came in as a school, then Cashmere, and then Booker T. Washington.
Okay.
So you ended up with 7 high schools. Just talking with various folk and doing some research on the book, found out that the Prairie View Interscholastic League had over 500 schools in their program, was a part of the Prairie View Interscholastic League program just before integration. And of those 500 schools, there were only 7 schools, black schools, that had swimming pools in the whole state of Texas.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was unbelievable.
Well, Mr. Robbins, it's been a pleasure to talk to you about your experiences in the Emancipation Park and to share that rich legacy of this community and your part in that. And we thank you very much for sharing your story.
Well, I'm glad that I was able to share a little light on some of the things and experiences that I had while growing up in this Third Ward area.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's been the Legacy of the Emancipation Park Neighborhood Community History Project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.